Hi friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to share my long-awaited, and I say long-awaited because I'm so happy I'm finally filming this for you guys because I'm really ready to put these books back on my shelf. This is going to be my February and March wrap-up. Now because I'm doing February and March, I have quite a stack here. It's not probably as many books as you guys read or anything, but it's been a while since I've read these books, so bear with me on my thoughts and feelings about them. But I want to go ahead and share what I read in February and March, so let's jump into the first book. The first thing that I read was Bad Romance by Heather Demetrios. This book is one of those that's going to stick with me for a very long time. I really did relate to the main character, Grace, sadly. I thought that the story was very believable and realistic, and I don't know, this book just really sticks out to me as like one of those relationships gone wrong that it takes a while for the woman to realize what a shitty situation she's in. And I related to that so much, and I ended up rating the story 4 stars rather than 5 stars because the writing was not my favorite. I did not really connect to the writing, but the story was so good. If you haven't picked this up, I highly recommend it, but there are trigger warnings for kind of domestic violence or relationship violence. Like this blurb on the back, it says part coming of age, part romance, and part war story. Story I picked this up at Barnes & Noble because I heard someone on BookTube talk about it and they said it was really good. This is Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough, and I rated this 5 stars. It's kind of like a thriller, mystery, suspense book. And one of the things that stuck out to me on the back is it says, with a final twist destined to provoke arguments for years to come. And that's like something like pretty high up on the scale to like live up to. And I completely see what they meant. You think you're going to get one story and you get a completely different story. And like knowing the story and holding this book up to you and like saying everything, it's just like bringing back, it's like giving me chills. She meets this guy, Louise meets this guy, and sparks kind of fly. Well, the next day at the office, she realizes that this guy is her new boss, and then like obviously he's married. She ends up befriending the wife, and it's kind of like 2 separate things. Like David says, don't really like interact with her, and she says, don't tell David we're friends. And you're trying to figure out, well, like, why? Why? Like, obviously, there's that one thing, but, like, why can't, you know, everything be told? And it's not until the very end when everything comes of light. But it says, the only thing that is crystal clear is that there's something wrong in this marriage, something in this marriage is very, very wrong. But Louise can't guess how wrong, how far a person might go to protect their marriage's secrets. And it's just, it's so crazy, but it does have like a little love triangle, but it's done in a completely different, like weird, strange, interesting, page-turning way. So if you're into those kind of things, definitely pick this one up. Next up, I read After You by Jojo Moyes. I know there's a lot of discussion about Me Before You and the representation in that book. You either like it or you don't. I understand. I'm not trying to validate anybody's feelings or thoughts or opinions on that. I picked this one up because I read Me Before You. I enjoyed it. I do have an aunt who is quadriplegic and she's in a wheelchair. So I do understand that side of things, but I picked this up because for my Book of the Month club for February, I got Still Me, and obviously I needed to read the second one, and I picked this up in like a thrift store or something like that. And so yeah, so I read this one. I enjoyed it, but not as much as the first one. The first one was really about Will and Louisa Clark and kind of like their story of meeting and falling in love and just everything that transpired because of who Will was and what Will was going through. This is the 6 months after the transformative 6 months you spent with Will. and she's kind of struggling to like get on with her life. I thought the writing was slow and a little bit uninteresting, and I ended up rating this one 3 stars because I thought it was okay, but it wasn't one of my favorites. But I am glad that I read it. I did show you in my book haul that I got a hardcover copy of this book. I don't even know what I tabbed here. I tabbed something. I did end up getting a hardcover copy of Me Before You and After You, so I will be getting rid of this. Any books that I'm getting rid of, I'm listing on my Depop, so I'm going to start listing my Depop down in the description bar, and if you're interested in any of the books that I'm unhauling, I'm going to post them on there, and then after a while, like if they're not selling, I just take them down and take them to the book exchange so I can get more books. And I participated in Read-A-Rama round number 9, and I had so much fun with that, so I have talked about these books, so I'm going to go a little bit fast. I read Cheese Sweet Home Part 1, my very first manga, which I loved it so much. A huge shout out to Sylvia from Wish Fulfillment, because if it wasn't for her, I would have given up on manga a long time ago, because I have tried it twice before, maybe even 3 times if I can count that 3rd time. But this is written in the American style. It's written, you know, front to back, left to right, and I loved it. It felt like a graphic novel to me. I could see subtle differences between like the American like graphic novels I'm used to reading and like these, but I loved it so much. I flew through it. I loved it so much that I went out to Barnes & Noble like during the readathon and purchased the 2nd and the 3rd part, because these parts include volumes 1, 2, and 3. So the 2nd part is 4, 5, and 6, and so on. But yeah, I loved this. It's all about this little cat, and it's a story told from the cat's perspective. And that was so refreshing and fun. And you get to see like how the cats think. And I have a cat and I have a dog, of course, too. But it was just like, the cats really think that, like what is going on in their head. But I loved it so much. It was so cute. She is a little kitten in this one, and she gets lost, and this family finds her and ends up taking her home to help her try to find her family. They don't end up finding her, so they end up kind of adopting her, even though in their apartment building there's no pets allowed. So it's just kind of like the adventures of this cat kind of like growing up and like being in this apartment where pets aren't allowed and adjusting to this family and so forth. Really cute, highly recommend. Then I picked up a poetry collection, Planting Gardens and Graves, Volume 1 by R.H. Sin. Really enjoyed this one. I ended up rating it 5 stars. There's a trigger warning for cutting. It kind of came out of nowhere, but it is there. It's a great collection. Definitely a must read for women in shitty relationships. Powerful words. Definitely buying more from this poet. That was kind of the thing. He has collections out, and like the Whiskey and the Shovel, like parts 1, 2, and 3, and then he has this other one, parts 1, 2, and 3. And I didn't want to like go back and get his old work. I figured I would start with like his newest thing at the time. I did mark some of my favorites here. I will share one with you. I liked this one. It's called Nagging. She wasn't nagging. She was just demanding you to do more than you were willing to. One more. Acceptance. Don't fix her, love her as is, and she'll become more of who she's supposed to be. So I really think that this collection kind of explores like shitty relationships and how everybody deserves more than that. So if you've ever dealt with that in your life, or you're just like in a women empowerment like mode, definitely pick this up. Also love following this poet on Instagram. Beautiful pictures, post poetry every once in a while. Great stuff. And then I circled back and finished Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste. I listened to this on audiobook. I'm glad I did. I loved this story. 5 out of 5 stars. I did post my first impressions about this book. I'm kind of going through something in my personal life, and it kind of was like not triggering in a bad way, but it was like making me think deeper about my situation than I felt like I was ready to think about. But I think that's good, and I think this gave me some answers that I was looking for. I loved this one. It's about this family that moves into this town that's kind of like this, you know, this perfect town, and it's kind of like this like free roaming, wandering mom that kind of always travels from town to town, and her daughter, and the daughter befriends 3 siblings from like another family, and then there's another family that's trying to adopt this girl, but then the biological mother comes into the picture. I don't know. It's about so much, and I think that everybody is going to get a little something different out of this story. But I will recommend this book for days because the writing is beautiful, but it's like a quiet, it's not like, ooh, look at my pretty prose, or like in your face. It's just simple, but it's like totally readable. Like, I didn't even know what I was getting into, and I just kept reading. I read this, if I wouldn't have stopped like for a brief period because of what I was going through in my personal life and I was kind of having difficulty with it, I could have easily read this in one sitting if I wasn't like working or whatever, just because it's so, like here it says on the front, witty, wise, and tender. It's a marvel. And it is. It's just witty. It's like interesting, and it just covers so much. So definitely pick this up if you're in the mood for a fiction story that just talks about so much with great writing, and it's so good. 5 stars. Like I said, I was so into the manga for Cheese Sweet Home, I went and picked up volumes 2 and 3. So I actually did purchase this in March, but I'm just including this here. So just imagine that this was in my haul. I really enjoyed this. It's kind of the continuation. It picks up right where the first part left off. This one I didn't love as much. I don't want to talk about like too much what it's about, but it's still about this little cat with his family and kind of, you know, the transition from the first book to this one. I really did like it, but it felt a little repetitive. It felt like not much happened for it being this thick and it being volumes 4, 5, and 6. I expected more. I expected more of like an arc like we got in the first part, and I didn't get that. But the writing and the layout and the, you know, the graphics, the illustrations, the manga style, like I loved everything about it. It's just that I wish it would have like captured me just like the first one did. But still, super highly recommend. If I wouldn't have read the first one, and this is the first one that I read, I would have rated it 5 stars. It's kind of like Saga by Brian K. Vaughan. Like, you read the first one, it's like a 5 stars, and then you kind of start judging the rest of the series a little bit more harsh than you probably would if it was the first one that you read. So that's kind of the case with this. Still highly recommend. Look at she's so cute. I love it. Yeah. Absolutely want to finish this entire manga series. And next, I got a couple of birthday presents from Danny at Danny Darling, and I got these both in February or March. It was like the tail end of February or beginning of March that I received these, so imagine these in my book haul as well. But I read them, so I just figured I would include them here in my wrap up. Okay, well first actually, let me go ahead and show you the books that she sent me. She sent me First Touch by Laurelyn Page, and she sent me The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. So I got these both for my birthday, and I wanted to read this one like so bad. I was in the mood for like a kind of a contemporary. I mean, that's my jam. I love contemporary. I love thriller mysteries. I definitely wanted to read this, but I was like, I want to read Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda first. So when I went out and I purchased the manga, I also picked up the Barnes & Noble special edition with exclusive bonus material, Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. And it was like perfect timing to pick it up because everybody was talking about the movie, which I still have not seen, and I plan to. I'm just not like a movie goer. It doesn't fit into my schedule. But yes, I loved this. I see what everybody is talking about. I don't know if I wrote anything on Goodreads. I didn't. I read it so fast. I probably read it in a day, and I loved it. 5 stars. I loved that you really were kind of like pulling for these characters, not only the relationships, but like the friendships as well. I loved that it had like a theater aspect to it because I am a theater nerd myself, so I loved that part. It kind of is like a grown-up drama in a way because it has gay characters and it has theater, and I loved it so much. I loved that it had like the emails, and it had people of color, and they didn't seem like they were like plot devices, or they didn't seem like they were like put in there to be diverse. It was just a diverse story like life is, and I loved that about it. So if for some reason you have not picked up and read Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, I highly recommend the book. I don't know where the bonus content starts and where it doesn't, like where it ends in the normal version, but after, so it obviously has, the end of the book ends here, and then it moves on to the acknowledgments, and then after the acknowledgments, which is like a couple of pages, rightfully so, it has the very first Simon Blue emails. So I don't know if those have been included in like other books, but they were totally worth the read. There was also like this movie set scrapbook and stuff like that. And then there's a conversation with Becky, Adam Silvera of They Both Titan, and Angie Thomas, the author of The Hate U Give, and just kind of like, you can just tell that they're really good friends and that they like want the best for Becky, and I loved it so much. Really liked it. 5 stars. Can't talk enough about it. The hype is real. I loved it. Picked up First Touch by Lauren Lynn Page. I am addicted to reads like this. Now, this is not a book that I can like recommend to everybody because it's a very specific type of read. It's a very dark romance, young adult story. It's a mixture of this girl, Emily, looking for her best friend Amber. They kind of had this friendship and they hadn't talked to each other in a while, but all of a sudden Emily gets this voicemail from Amber using this code word that meant that they're in trouble. So Emily goes on this kind of like hunt for her best friend, or her used to be best friend, her really close friend. And in the process, she ends up running into this guy, Reeve, who, oh my gosh, so swoon worthy if you like this type of story, that she thinks could like lead her to where Amber is, what happened to Amber. He's like the last one that she was able to connect Amber with. So she ends up like tracking down this Reeve guy, kind of trying to like form a relationship with him because she wants to find out more about what happened to Amber. And in the process, she ends up really liking this guy. And you're trying to figure out like what happened to Amber. She has this other guy, Joe, who's like helping her investigate. And there's like, she's worried it's like the Greek mob, and she's wondering like, did Reeve kill her? But she's kind of like falling for this guy at the same time. Just to discover the truth, Emily sets out to seduce him, meaning Reeve. But when she's forced to decide where her loyalties lie, how will Emily choose between saving Amber and saving her heart? She really does start falling for this Reeve guy, but she thinks that like he had something to do with Amber's disappearance, and you're trying to discover like, did he have something to do with it? I completely think this type of story is addicting because not only does it have those like sexy, steamy moments mixed in, but it also had this like mystery element that like really drew me in, and I wanted to find out what happened. I picked up The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli, and I'm so glad I did. It's so cute. This one just had me smiling so hard. You know when you have that like, that like really happy smile? Yeah, I definitely had that with this one. Rated at 5 stars. Love the representation. Some people have not liked this, and I'm not sure. Now that I've read it, I need to go back and watch some of those reviews of the people that didn't like it, because if you don't like this story, like, you missed something. This is really the story about 2 sisters that are completely different. One is, okay, first of all, the parents are lesbians. Love that. But it's about the one sister who has had all these crushes all of her life and never had a boyfriend. And she doesn't understand, like, why have I never had a boyfriend? Like, I'm deserving, I'm cool. But her sister has always been, like, really popular and had, you know, relationships before, but it's also about kind of them coming to this age where they're finding their own way and doing their own things, and they're kind of drifting apart a little bit. And as twins, I'm sure that's like extra hard. But it's kind of like finding that moment where it's just supposed to happen, and not forcing anything, but like this, it was so cute. I just want to give these characters a hug and like give Becky a hug, because she writes such realistic stories, first of all, because they're so diverse, and like the cast and just everything is just so perfect in these books, because they just seem like you're really reading a story about someone she knows or something like that. They don't seem like made up fictional stories. And for that reason, you just connect with it. And like maybe not on a personal level, but like on a human level. And it's so wonderful. And you just root for these characters just like you do in Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. And I don't know, I loved the ending. What did I write on Goodreads? 5 stars, obviously. I gritted my teeth. I was smiling so hard on page 276. I cried real tears because I felt understood and got the answer I was looking for. Pages 315 to 316. So again, I'm going through something in my personal life, and I felt like, again, I was just understood. And maybe I'm searching for that in books. I don't think so, but I was just like, yes. So I definitely marked those 2 little things. These are books that, like, I hope this is made into a movie as well. I'm definitely going to pick up Leo on the Offbeat just because I think her writing is so, like, easy to read, relatable, realistic, beautiful. Like, you just love her characters so much. Okay, so then I was kind of on my dark romance, and I finally picked up the second book in the Quintessentially Q by Pepper Winters. These are self-published books, and I picked up Tears for Tess a while ago. And these are the type of stories that like really stick with you. You really don't need to go back no matter how much time has passed. It says a new adult dark contemporary romance not suitable for people sensitive to grief, slavery, and non-consensual sex. So trigger warnings for all of that. These are so dark and so twisted, but you're so invested in the story. I feel like a lot of people don't like these type of books because they think it's like too sexy. There's just sex scene after sex scene after sex scene. That's not what this book is. I don't want to really talk about the plot because, you know, if you haven't read the first book, but again, this book is not for everybody. But something happens in this book and I was just like devastated, and I was like, this seriously like can't even happen right now, and it did, and you're like, oh my god. So the plot twists in this are real, the trigger warnings are real, but overall you just get to love the characters in the story, not only like the main characters but like the side characters, and you just come to care about them and like their happiness. And even though you may not agree with what makes them happy, not everything makes everybody the same happy. Like what you like, I may not like, and considering that's very emotional and sexually like talked about in this book, even though I didn't agree with every single thing that happened, like you just want these people to be happy. And even if you're kind of like not sure how that makes them happy, like to me, it's all about their happiness and making sure that they're okay. And there was very few times that I was sure that they were going to be okay. And even after reading this, you're kind of like, I need to pick up the third book. So I do have that on my shelf. I hope to read it soon. But yeah, I do love this story. I ended up rating it 5 stars. And then my last book that I'm briefly going to talk about, because this video has been way too long, is my March book of the month pick, which was Not That I Could Tell by Jessica Strawster. This is a book that I'm going to do another first impressions video on, so I don't want to talk about it too much. I have temporarily DNF'd this. I am halfway through probably. I am on page 151, chapter 20. This is kind of like a thriller mystery. There's this group of girlfriends that live in this neighborhood, and they all have this, like, they're drinking wine around a bonfire and talking about their lives and stuff, as women do. And the next morning, a police officer comes to one of the houses and is like, hey, have you seen so-and-so? And she's like, no. And they're like, yeah, she's missing. So this one mother, this one lady of this group, and her children up and vanished. Like what happened? Like, they're asking, like, did she say something? Or like, and you're kind of trying to figure out, like, what happened to her. Did something happen, or did she just up and leave? And why did she up and leave? And so it's kind of like that. So you're gonna finish it because you want to see what happens, but if you don't see what happens, it's like no big deal type thing. So anyway, I did not read Big Little Lies, but I did watch the HBO show, and oh my god, it was so good. So don't know what I'm doing about this one yet, but I do plan to do a first impressions about it. So stay tuned for that. But that's all for today's very long wrap up. I hope you were able to stick with me until the end. If not, okay, sorry, goodbye. But I hope you're all having a lovely day, and leave me a comment down below, like if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them, and so forth. And I'll see you guys again in my very next video. Bye!